Well, you're right, the list goes on, but we won't talk more about me in that regard, because a lot of you have known me, and you know, in coming here, it's like coming home. Gracie and I had the pleasure, as Randy talked about, of living in this great state for 13 years. And I'll tell you two things. When we moved from Missouri to California, two things didn't change for us. Our kids were in parochial school, and so when we moved them from St. Francis to St. Pius here, the only thing that really changed there was the color of the kids' uniforms, okay? And the other thing, when we moved here and we got involved, because we were already members of AGC here, it was no difference there, because our home chapter was AGC of Missouri. So as usual, how do you move up in all of these volunteer organizations? For those of you that wonder the secret of doing that, just learn to say no and you won't move up. You keep saying yes, and the next thing you know, here you are standing up here trying to tell everybody why it is that you should be involved in AGC and every other thing that you do. When I go back in here and I want to talk about AGC National, Randy talked about, I went to work actually I got out of the Army in 1972, was going back to school on the GI Bill, and he gave me more of a title than actually what I had. My first title with Herzog was clerk laborer. And so tell me about that. Well, if the asphalt plant was running, I was a clerk, and if it wasn't, I was a laborer. And that was that simple how it went. And I've been going backwards ever since in that regard. But if you go back in here, the founder of our company, Bill Herzog, early on got me involved in AGC. And he said, Al, I just want to tell you, because he was a firm believer in it, he said, Al, everything that you need to know about being a contractor, I guarantee you somewhere in AGC they can educate you, help you do that. And so I got involved in here, and then here I am, and I'm going to say, Tom Holzman asked me last night at dinner, he said, Al, you've got to pick a theme for next year. Have you picked it? And I was honest with Tom. I said, you know, I haven't really figured it out, but, you know, I think it's going to be along this line. My theme is going to be a question. And I think that question is going to be, why AGC? And I'm going to talk more from a national perspective because, like I said, coming here and being a past president of AGC of California did a lot to prepare me for being, it prepared me to keep my hand off this mic here right now, is what it did. And so, because if you take a look at this chapter, at the time I was president, we had 13 districts, as I recall, Tom. So I'm traveling up and down the state. Now we got over 90-some chapter, a little under 100 chapters in AGC National. So as I'm traveling around with it, it comes in. But let's talk about the relationship from a national level to a chapter level. Our clients from a national level are the chapters at the end of the day. We are a support unit to all of those chapters. So what are we doing at the national level? What's our mission there? Well, if you'll take one, and it's also a main mission that you have here in the state, we advocate on behalf of the industry. And when AGC was first founded almost 100 years ago, it won't be long, we'll be 100 years old as a national organization. And some of the primary founders came from this state, like a guy by the name of Bechtel and Kaiser and people like that. They were the founding members. And when they founded themselves, they founded it on one premise, and that is, when they talk about advocating for the industry, what they were really looking is to continue to establish markets for those of us that are in the construction industry. So as we look today, our mission has not changed. We're here today to do exactly what it was that they did then. So when you go back in history, so when you say why AGC, what would happen if we didn't have advocates in Washington, D.C. today? And we've got, right now, I believe it's 7 full-time lobbyists back there, and they're doing exactly what Dave and Jamie are doing here. To a large degree, they're playing major defensive ball. you spend more time legislatively stopping bad things from happening than you really have the opportunity to promote things that are more of a positive nature. And I just want to talk about a few things that National AGC is doing, I'm going to say that has a potential of maybe getting done. And one of the major things on a legislative level is immigration. Now, you think about how important is that to us? Well, if it wasn't for the crisis that we had in '08, if you all will think back at that point in time, what was one of our biggest challenges then? Finding enough people that wanted to work in our industry. If there's a benefit that came out of that, it was the fact that the economy took it down, and where we were out trying to scramble around to find people, guess what? They were available to us now. Now that thing will eventually turn around. And if you want to go back in here and you want to look at the average age of a construction worker, and most of you probably, you know, it's somewhat debatable what it is, but I'll tell you it's right around 50 years old. And one of the challenges that we have as an industry, and therefore nationally and chapter-wise, is to create an enthusiasm within the people to come back into our industry. And I want to talk a little bit more. It's a bigger challenge than that when I say industry and workforce, and to a large degree I'm talking about trades. I'm going to speak for Herzog. Well, right now in both areas, we're fortunate enough to have a pool of people. A kid coming out of college right now has really got a challenge. Now, we have no problem hiring anybody that we want that's got a degree. But I will tell you, when we go out there and we look on our projects, most of our project superintendents, who are tradespeople, get more money than the project managers. You know why? Because they're more valuable. Most of you will understand that. So you go back in here and you say, okay, they're more valuable. Well, what do we do? Well, let's talk immigration if we can. I'll speak for Herzog. We worked in 42 states last year, all the provinces of Canada except the 2 eastern ones, and primarily why we did that is because we work for all the Class 1 freight railroads. So we work in all the border states, you know, California, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas. If we look at our workforce there and we run a deal on it, and I'm talking about the trades workforce, 30% of our workforce in those areas have Hispanic surnames. Now, when we go in here and when I say things turn, I think we're going to go in here because, you know what, unlike myself, I first started working when I was in high school in the summertime. Most of us couldn't hire a high school kid to go out and work on our job. You know why? Because they got to be 18 years old or above. Our insurance companies are going to say, forget that, you ain't going to do that. So when I grew up, that wasn't the problem. But you come back here now, we're going to have to go in here and find a workforce. So when you follow immigration, and I think there is a possibility, and I say a possibility, that we might actually see something happen there. And the reason I think there's a possibility is because politically speaking, and I'm going to say more from the Republican side, if they don't figure out how they address immigration to start thinking about the consequence of that, just look at the way people are voting. I happened to be in the PAC meeting today, and it was kind of funny because some things just don't change, except look at the demographics of the voters in California and where your legislature is, which used to be my legislature at a point in time. So when you look at it from a national perspective, we are there to protect your interests on a national level as your advocates. But we're also there to go in here and support you in any fashion that we want. We've got a fund to where, and let's talk about something that's unique to California, and you can call it a negative in the sense, if you look all the other states, watch what happened here, because we were talking about air quality and what it does to emissions and therefore what it does. This state will start, in a lot of respects, what I call the bad influence that we're going to see. So we at National watch what's happening here, and if you want to make a request of us because you're trying to fight off, carbon emissions and things like that, we give you money to do that because you're setting trends. Sometimes, now I'm all for clean air, clean water, but you can only do it as fast as what you can. You guys write, I say you guys, I used to be one of you, by the way, are writing regulations that can't be done. So again, from the national level, we're here to support that effort for you, and not only that, other chapters that have it come in. What's the challenge for us as an association? Well, I'm a veteran. I told you I come out of the Army in '72. I've been a lifetime member of the American Legion. Here we go. You can hear me better here, I think. If you go in here and you talk about associations, the problem we got is the next generations don't associate like we do or have. When you go in here, and I want to use an example, we created a task force to look at our convention on a national level because we believe we're going to have to modify that convention to attract people to go in here and do it. And I'm going to use an example of my kids, more than that, my grandkids, as they come up. The way they associate, I can remember when I was young, I wanted to be able to join the country club, join this, join that, because that's how we associated with each other. There's a little thing called a computer that got put into play, and you look at email and Twitter and texting and all that. In most of the public schools today, nobody's writing anymore. There's no need to. There's no script. They're not teaching it. Now, I find that troubling in a way, but I understand it. So for us to be an association as we go on later on in life, I got put on the first task force. John Noonan was there to think about how we need to look in the future to continue to attract people to be a part of this association. Let me tell you, the younger generation don't have time to sit around and just talk to each other. If there's no value in it, they won't go. And I hate to say this, I think in my lifetime, you may not see an American Legion because there won't be enough members there to be able to have it created. Any of the old social or country clubs, if you look at country clubs, all of them struggle because if people want to play golf, they'll go join a golf course, but they don't want to be part of a country club. So when you take a look at the demographics as they change and whatever into the future, this is one of our challenges. You as a chapter have the same challenge. This is a challenge across the country. So when you go in here and you say, what do? We do what you need us to do in support of you. And like I say, I'm going to give more opportunities for you to ask me questions. Another thing that I'll tell you on our side, I never thought that I would see the day that I had to learn to be a banker. But as you look at the shortfalls in funding at the federal level, people are going to have to still build things. And even though on these public-private partnerships, I'm going to say to you, it's not cheap, but whatever else, what's their choices? So I've been sitting in here, we as Herzog invested in an equity fund because if you've ever done one of these P3s, it is not cheap. Just to participate, you're talking big money. And I will tell you, if you haven't got involved in it, start looking at it because it's going to affect you. We at AGC have programs and things to help you with that process. One of the other trends that I'm going to say that I think will probably happen is you're seeing more and more of acquisitions and mergers. When Tom talked about what's happening to his dues revenue up there, it's because when somebody got acquired, your maximum dues didn't change because it went away. The membership of National at its peak was approximately 33,000 firms. We're now approximately 30,000. And I'm sure it's no different than a reflection of where you are. And that's primarily driven by the economy. So for all of you, I'm not going to go in here. I noticed they put me at the back of the end here because the reception's coming up. And I think they put me there because they thought Al will want to get to that reception more than he's going to want to talk to you, so he'll shut up real quick, and they were right. So I'm going to close by simply saying this. It's a distinct honor and a privilege for me to represent this industry and be in this office. And I want to thank you in this chapter, because but for me being a member of this chapter, I wouldn't be there. Thank you.